Hey guys, how's it going? So today I'm going to be talking about an amazing peripheral for the Sega Dreamcast, and that is a VGA box. Now what is a VGA box, you may ask? Well, it's essentially a device that you plug into the back of your Dreamcast in order to get a really good picture signal. I mean, it's really freaking good. And that's why I decided to create this video, in order to show you guys how good does this picture actually look compared to the regular composite outputs of the Dreamcast, and to tell you guys how does this thing work. So the particular version of VGA box that I have here is the Retrobit brand. And the reason that I have it is because it's the only one that I have at the time I make this video. But yeah, it's actually a pretty good unit. So if I turn it to this side right here, you can see there is a VGA port along with an audio jack port as well. And then if you turn it to this side right here, you can see a little switch that I'm going to be explaining what it does a little bit later in this video. So on this side we got the composite and S-video port, and then on the bottom here we can actually see through and see the PCB board of the VGA box, which is, I actually really like that design aspect of this VGA box. Anyways, what I'm showing you guys right here is essentially the plug that we're going to be using in order to insert the VGA box into the Sega Dreamcast. But before I show you guys how to do that, first of all I'm going to show off the box of this unit. And the reason why I want to do that is because, do you guys notice the flags at the bottom left corner of this box right here? Basically, it's to illustrate that this box works on all regions of Sega Dreamcast. It doesn't matter if you have a Japanese, European, or American Sega Dreamcast, this VGA box will work on every single one of those. And that's awesome because this rule also applies to every single Sega Dreamcast peripheral there is out there. With the exception of the official Sega Dreamcast light gun that was released in Europe, and that's actually for a very special reason, and I'll talk more about that whenever I get one of those light guns. So yeah, so here's the VGA box in its original plastic wrapping, and then if we look inside of the packaging right here, we can see there's actually no instruction manual inside of this thing, which is kind of a bummer, but that's okay because I know how to make this thing work on your Sega Dreamcast, and that's what I'm going to be showing off to you guys in this video. So let's get started on that. So here I got a Sega Dreamcast right here, and if you flip it onto its back, you will notice all of these ports and all this kind of stuff. Now, the port that you want to plug your VGA box into is the one that's labeled AV out, and I'll probably show you guys which port it is on the screen. And basically, yes, you're going to take this cord of the VGA box right here and then plug it into that port. And then, of course, once we got it all plugged, first of all, we need to test to see if it works. Because one thing that's really notorious about these VGA boxes is that the port has to have a really tight connection in order for the VGA box to work. And the way that we can confirm this is that whenever you turn on your Dreamcast, there should be a light turning on your Retrobit VGA box as well, indicating that there is a solid connection with the port on the back of the Dreamcast. Alright, so I'm going to show you guys what happens if there actually isn't a tight connection of your VGA box to your Dreamcast and you saw it, the light immediately turned off. And this is only for me just pulling out just a slight bit. So yeah, I hope you guys can really understand that the VGA boxes, no matter which one you use, has to have a really solid connection with your Dreamcast in order for it to work. Alright, now that we've made sure that the VGA box is connected to your Sega Dreamcast, I think it's time that we move on to other things that you're going to need in order to make your VGA box work. So one of these items is obviously a VGA to VGA cord, so that you can connect your VGA box to a computer monitor. Now, these two other things that I got here are completely optional because they're dependent on what kind of audio setup that you have. But what I got here is essentially an audio jack to audio jack port, and then I also have an RCA to audio jack cable right here. So the first thing that we're going to do is that we're going to take our VGA cord and plug it into our VGA port. And remember to screw it in because, like how the VGA box needs to have a really tight connection with the Dreamcast, the VGA cord also needs to have a really tight connection with the VGA port. So make sure that you remember to screw it on. So what we're going to do now is that we're going to basically take our computer monitor and flip it onto its back, because what we're going to do is that we're going to take the other end of the VGA cord and plug it into the VGA port of this computer, remembering to basically screw it on. So obviously you need to have a tight connection here too. Now keep in mind this is actually one way that you can connect your VGA box to any sort of display medium. I mean, like, you can actually connect it to a television, you can connect it to a projector, so on and so forth. So if you guys have like any questions concerning how to connect, you know, your VGA box to any of these things that I've just mentioned, please ask me down in the comment section below and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put our computer monitor back to its place, and then I plug the computer monitor back to a power source off camera, and then I just turn it on right here, and look at that, we got ourselves a nice image right here, which means that we were successful in setting up the video part of our VGA box, which is pretty good. But we're not done yet because we also have to set up the audio part of our VGA box, which is what I'll be talking about next. So what we're going to do is that we're going to take our RCA to audio jack cable and plug it into basically the red and white ports of your composite ports on your VGA box. And this is the part where I want to explain why I mentioned earlier in this video that these two cables I have here are optional, because everybody has very different audio setups. For example, these Dell speakers have this like audio jack thing, and the only way to make my cables, the ones that I have here, connect to that is to use this audio jack to audio jack dongle that I got here. So, and again, you know, many people have like very different types of setups and all that kind of stuff. So if you guys have like any questions about how to basically connect your audio setup to your VGA box, please tell me in the comment section down below and I'd be more than happy to help you guys out. So I'm just going to turn on my speakers right here, and after all of this, we've made quite a mess, so I'm going to basically clean up really quickly right here, and we're done. So what I'm going to be doing now is that I'm going to test if everything is working just as fine as it is by basically taking this controller and putting it into my Dreamcast. Now this is where I want to mention something to you guys, and that is to never ever plug anything into your Dreamcast while it is on. And the reason is because the controller ports of the Dreamcast has a fuse that if you try to basically plug anything in there while the console is on, more than likely that fuse will pop, and basically what happens then is that none of the controller ports on your Dreamcast will work, again, unless you fix it, and it's a nightmare to fix this problem. So just remember this tip and never to plug anything into your Dreamcast while it's on. So I'm just testing a few things around here, and I'm absolutely happy to say that everything is working fine. So if you happen to reach this part of this tutorial in setting up your VGA box for your Dreamcast, you are absolutely finished with everything. Although there is one more thing that I would like to share with you guys, and that is, do you guys remember at the very beginning of this video I mentioned about there is a switch on the VGA box? Well, here's the switch, and the purpose of this thing is to allow you to be able to boot some non-compatible VGA games into VGA mode, and I'll show you guys how to do that in a little bit. But before I do that, I'm going to show you guys how a normal Dreamcast game that works with VGA works on a Sega Dreamcast. So here I got Fatal Fury Mark of the Wolves, a very excellent game by the way. But yeah, when the Dreamcast is booting up a game normally, it shows off this Sega logo screen right here at first, and then it goes into the main game, as you're going to see right here. So yeah, that's basically how a normal Dreamcast game that's compatible with VGA works. Now I'm going to show you guys a game that is, at first you may think is incompatible with VGA, but it can actually be force booted into VGA mode. And I'm going to show you guys that in a little bit, but before we do that, I'm going to show you guys how it normally boots up without trying any methods whatsoever. And no Sega logo screen. Instead, you get this warning little message thing right here. And this is where the switch comes in, because the switch is what we're going to be using in order to force boot this game into VGA mode. So in order to do that, we have to flip the switch into TV mode first, and then at the right moment, you have to switch it back into PC mode. Now, I'm going to be quiet for a little bit because I want you guys to listen very carefully to the visual cues that are going on here. And voila! We've successfully booted our game into VGA mode. Now if it does seem confusing about what was going on right there, I'll gladly explain what's going on. So basically the precise time that you're supposed to push that switch from TV mode back into PC mode is when the Sega logo screen pops up. Now this is a little bit tricky to do considering that we have to work with a black screen, but the Dreamcast does gives us some audio clues in order to figure out when are we supposed to flick that switch. And one of these cues is that you may have noticed that the Dreamcast makes this chime noise whenever it boots from the main menu screen to this logo screen. Now, generally I use this chime as basically to prepare me to get ready to flick the switch, because if you remember that when it makes that noise, that's not when the Sega logo screen pops up, it's afterwards. So you guys may be wondering, then how do you know when that Sega logo screen is going to pop up or not? Well, if you actually listen closely, the Dreamcast actually makes a loud noise whenever it gets into that screen. And once you hear that noise, that is exactly when you are supposed to flick that switch from TV mode into PC mode in order to force boot a game into VGA mode. And if you're very successful in doing that, you'll be met with this nice Sega logo screen right here. And on top of all this, there are actually ways that you can tell if you either flick that switch too early or too late. If you do it too early, you will be met with this warning screen. If you do it too late, you will be met with just a black screen and nothing will happen. I know all this stuff sounds really complicated and all that, but it is actually really simple to do. And trust me guys, going through all this kind of stuff is more than worth it because VGA is super beautiful. And I'm going to show you guys how beautiful it looks in just a little bit. But before I show you guys that, there's one more thing that I'd like to talk about, and that is, yes, there are games that are incompatible with VGA that can be force booted, like I just demonstrated. But there are also, unfortunately, games that cannot be force booted into VGA. And I'm going to be showing you guys an example of one of them. So the example I have here is Caesar's Palace. And yes, it seems like it's working fine at first, but after the game gets past this intro thing, it will not boot into the main game. And no, this is not due to like a scratch disk or anything like that, and I'm going to prove it to you guys in a little bit. So hey guys, I'm back, and I've hitched my Dreamcast to an old CRT TV using Composite. And if everything goes right, then the game should boot into the main title screen. So there you go. That's proof that the disc is absolutely fine. It's just that the game will not boot into VGA mode, which is unfortunate because there are others like it. So what I'm going to be doing is that in the description of this video, I'm going to be putting a list of the games that are non-VGA and are completely incompatible with it, and other non-VGA games that can be force booted into VGA. And speaking of that, since I'm just reminded about composites, I think it's time that I talk about the differences in the video quality of the Retrobit VGA box versus the original composite cables that came with the Dreamcast. In order to do that, I'm going to be using a very special game that I already mentioned earlier in this video, and that game is Fatal Fury Mark of the Wolves.
Round 1, fight!
I hope you guys enjoyed that little part right there. Anyways, what you guys are seeing right now is basically a high definition capture of me playing Fatal Fury Mark of the Wolves on the Sega Dreamcast. That's absolutely right. You're not looking at an emulator right here, you're actually looking at actual Dreamcast capture, which looks really sharp, clear, and vibrant to look at. It's so freaking gorgeous to look at. I didn't actually do an HD capture of the composite footage of me basically playing this game, and I thought the reason is because, you know, obviously the footage is not going to be the exact same as what's presented right here. So I thought the best way to show the difference between the VGA mode on the Dreamcast versus composite is to actually do the intro scene of this game right here. And you're going to find that the amount of difference between these two formats are very big. gosh, I love that intro. Anyways, I hope you guys were able to tell the difference between VGA and Composite. I mean, the difference was pretty big. In Composite, the colors were extremely washed out, the contrast was really bad too, and all that stuff, and of course it looked very blurry. VGA fixed all those problems, but I do see one area that people might prefer Composite for, and that is it's not as jaggy looking. And that's actually due to the converter that I use in order to capture the footage. It actually smoothened out the image a lot more. But it's not the good type of smoothing like you would see in like an emulator. It's more like an actual blurring effect. It's not really good. And the problem gets way worse when you actually plug Composite directly into a composite input on a TV. So my recommendation is that if you're really don't want to upgrade to VGA and stick around with Composite, I highly recommend that you try it with a converter. But man, oh man, you cannot ignore the colors and the vibrancy that VGA has that Composite doesn't. So I'm sure you guys can tell by now what are my thoughts about this thing, and that is this Retrobit VGA box is fantastic. It's absolutely a peripheral that I would recommend for your Sega Dreamcast collection. Although I wouldn't recommend it as highly as I would have a few years ago, because it has significantly risen in price over the years, because it used to only cost $25. Now the only eBay seller that sells this thing is trying to sell it for $64. That's insane. And actually that price tag actually makes it not the cheapest VGA box that you can get anymore. In fact, now that title goes to the Kuro VGA box, which I will gladly talk about whenever I get my hands on one of those units. But as of right now, I still would absolutely recommend this product because it has a really nice, crisp, and clean VGA signal, and of course it has that really nice switch that allows you to force boot some non-VGA games into VGA mode, which is great. There is one more thing that I'd like to say, and that is, I know some of you guys probably had some questions about this from the start, and that is, why did I use audio from the composite ports instead of the audio jack port? Well, that's actually this Retrobit VGA box's biggest problem, and that is the sound coming from the audio jack port is incredibly poor. It is not, it's like really muddied and all that kind of stuff. And actually, if you watch my Sonic Adventure 2 Let's Play, in the first few episodes, I used this port in order to record my audio, and I'm sure you guys can remember, it sounds freaking terrible. But if you guys haven't seen that Let's Play, I'm going to pull out a cutscene from Sonic Adventure 2, and I'm basically going to do very similar to what I did with the VGA and Composite comparison, and that is I'm going to toggle between basically the audio coming from the RCA ports and the audio coming from the audio jack. So I hope this demonstration will clearly show how different do these ports sound. So yeah, basically after this comparison, this is where I'm going to end the video. So I really want to thank you guys for watching this video. I hope on the instructions parts I didn't like speak too fast or anything like that, because I'm just trying to shove so much information down, and it's kind of difficult to do it given the amount of video footage that I have to record on. But yeah, I hope you guys can understand that. Once again, thank you guys for watching. This is the Sega Dreamcast. My name is Michael, and may the dream be with you.
What? It all starts with this. A jewel containing the ultimate power.
That's the Chaos Emerald! Now I know what's going on. The military has mistaken me for the likes of you! So, where do you think you're going with that emerald? Say something, you fake hedgehog!
Chaos Control!
Wow, he's fast! Hey, it's not his speed. He must be using the Chaos Emerald to warp.
Shadow, I'm the world's ultimate life form. There's no time for games. Farewell!
Shadow! What?
Don't move! Stay where you are! Keep your hands